In 2019, the Marvel Cinematic Universe reached its peak. Avengers: Endgame brought together every hero in the MCU for a massive battle, and the world was hooked. But what happened after the dust settled? How did Marvel go from the unstoppable force that captivated millions to a fractured and struggling franchise? In this video, we'll take a deep dive into how Marvel, the studio that changed cinema forever, started to destroy itself post-Endgame. But before we get into it, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell to stay updated on more breakdowns like this. The loss of core heroes, the Tony Stark and Steve Rogers vacuum. The departure of Tony Stark, Iron Man, and Steve Rogers, Captain America, left a gaping hole in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, MCU. These two characters were the emotional and narrative anchors of the Infinity Saga, and their journeys resonated deeply with audiences. Tony Stark began his story as a selfish, hedonistic billionaire but transformed into a selfless hero who sacrificed his life to save the universe. Similarly, Steve Rogers was the embodiment of selflessness and integrity, a man who consistently put the needs of others above his own. Together, they provided the MCU with a moral and emotional foundation that made the franchise's interconnected storytelling feel cohesive and impactful. After Avengers: Endgame, 2019, the MCU attempted to fill the void left by Tony and Steve with new heroes, but the results have been mixed at best. Sam Wilson, Falcon, was handed the mantle of Captain America in Endgame, but his transformation into a leading figure was poorly handled. The Falcon and the Winter Soldier explored Sam's reluctance to take on the Shield, but the series spent more time reflecting on Steve's legacy than developing Sam's own identity. Unlike Tony's traumatic wake-up call in Iron Man or Steve's heroic sacrifice in Captain America, the first Avenger, Sam's decision to embrace the Captain America mantle lacked a compelling catalyst, making his arc feel unearned. The absence of a clear successor to Tony Stark has also hurt the franchise. Peter Parker, Spider-Man, was positioned as a potential candidate, especially given his mentorship under Tony, but Sony and Marvel's shared custody of the character complicates his centrality to the MCU. Meanwhile, characters like Doctor Strange and Carol Danvers, Captain Marvel, lack the grounded relatability that made Tony and Steve so beloved. Without strong, unifying figures to rally behind, the MCU has struggled to maintain the same emotional resonance. This has led to a fragmented narrative where no single character feels essential to the franchise's overarching story. Quantity over quality, the Disney Plus era. The launch of Disney Plus was a game-changer for the MCU, providing Marvel Studios with a platform to expand its universe beyond traditional films. With series like WandaVision, Loki, and The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, the franchise explored new formats, diving deeper into character backstories and experimenting with unconventional storytelling. However, the sheer volume of content released in a short period, 10 movies and 10 miniseries between 2021 and 2023, overwhelmed audiences and diluted the MCU's impact. In the Infinity Saga, Marvel's strategy was to release a limited number of carefully interconnected films, each contributing to a larger narrative. This measured approach allowed audiences to digest the storylines and build anticipation for the next installment. By contrast, the post-Endgame era has felt like a deluge of content, with little time for audiences to absorb or appreciate individual projects. Many of the Disney Plus series, while ambitious, failed to achieve their full potential. WandaVision started strong with its unique sitcom-inspired format but faltered in its finale, which reverted to a generic CGI-laden battle. Loki introduced intriguing multiverse concepts but spent much of its runtime setting up future projects rather than delivering a self-contained story. Meanwhile, The Falcon and the Winter Soldier struggled with pacing issues and an underdeveloped antagonist. This flood of content has also strained Marvel's creative resources. The studio's trademark polish has given way to rushed visual effects, inconsistent storytelling, and lackluster character development. Audiences, once eager to watch every Marvel release, have started to experience fatigue, making it clear that the franchise's quantity over quality approach is unsustainable. The villain problem, from Thanos to Kang. Thanos was a masterstroke in cinematic villainy. Introduced in the Avengers 2012 and developed over 6 years, Thanos became the MCU's ultimate antagonist, embodying a chilling mix of power, conviction, and complexity. His mission to collect the Infinity Stones and his belief in the righteousness of his cause made him a compelling figure. By the time Infinity War 2018 and Endgame 2019 arrived, Thanos had become the centerpiece of a carefully orchestrated narrative that spanned multiple films. In the Multiverse saga, Marvel aimed to replicate Thanos' success with Kang the Conqueror. Played by Jonathan Majors, Kang was introduced as a variant in Loki 2021 and later as the main antagonist in Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania 2023. Unlike Thanos, who cast a shadow over the entire Infinity Saga, Kang's presence has been inconsistent and underwhelming. His motivations remain unclear, and his interactions with other characters have been limited, making it difficult for audiences to view him as a credible threat. The Multiverse saga's lack of a clear narrative throughline further weakens Kang's impact. While the Infinity Stones served as a unifying element in the previous phases, the multiverse concept has been explored in a disjointed manner. Films like Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness and Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania introduced fascinating ideas but failed to connect them to the larger story. Without a compelling villain to anchor the saga, the stakes feel lower, and the sense of urgency that defined the Infinity Saga is absent. The growing disconnect between Marvel and its audience. One of the most significant consequences of Marvel's rapid expansion is a growing disconnect between the franchise and its audience. In the early days, fans had a strong emotional connection with the characters and were eager to follow their journeys across multiple films. The slow build-up, the surprises, and the small, meaningful crossovers allowed fans to feel invested in the MCU's narrative arc. However, as the number of films and TV shows has skyrocketed, it's become increasingly difficult for the average viewer to keep up. As Marvel tries to juggle so many characters and storylines, it feels like the audience's emotional connection to the characters has been diluted. New fans are finding it challenging to follow along, especially with the introduction of complex concepts like the multiverse, and the increasing reliance on comic book lore that may be inaccessible to casual moviegoers. Additionally, the MCU's attempt to embrace more diverse storytelling with characters like Shang-Chi and Ms. Marvel has been met with mixed responses. While these films introduce refreshing perspectives, the lack of continuity and focus makes it difficult for them to feel like part of a larger, cohesive narrative. For many viewers, it feels like they are being asked to invest in too many different storylines, all while the MCU's core themes and central characters are pushed to the background. The reliance on big-name stars and spectacle, rather than deep character development, risks alienating a loyal fan base that helped propel Marvel to its current heights. Character overload. One of the MCU's greatest strengths during the Infinity Saga was its ability to focus on a core group of characters, allowing audiences to develop deep emotional connections with each one. The original Avengers Iron Man, Captain America, Thor, Hulk, Black Widow, and Hawkeye were given ample screen time to grow, evolve, and interact with one another. Their relationships, conflicts, and camaraderie added emotional depth to the franchise, making moments like the battle in New York and the airport fight in Civil War unforgettable. In the post-Endgame era, Marvel has introduced a plethora of new characters, including Shang-Chi, the Eternals, Ms. Marvel, Moon Knight, and She-Hulk. While many of these characters are intriguing in their own right, the sheer volume has made it difficult for any one hero to stand out. This overcrowding has also diluted the sense of a shared universe. For instance, Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings delivered a compelling origin story with a charismatic lead, but Shang-Chi has yet to appear in any subsequent MCU projects. Similarly, the Eternals, despite their cosmic significance, have had little impact on the broader narrative. Without meaningful crossovers or interactions, these characters feel isolated, reducing the interconnectedness that once defined the MCU. The overcrowding problem extends to villains as well. With so many new heroes and subplots, the MCU has struggled to create memorable antagonists. This lack of focus has made it harder for audiences to invest in the franchise's new direction. The MCU's shift in tone. One of the defining features of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, MCU, in its early phases was its ability to balance tone and scale, creating stories that were grounded yet epic. The interconnected films allowed characters to evolve naturally within a shared universe, and each movie contributed to a larger narrative without overwhelming the audience with excessive plot lines or tonal inconsistencies. The tone of films like Captain America, The Winter Soldier, 2014, combined political intrigue with superhero action, while Guardians of the Galaxy, 2014, balanced humor, heart, and spectacle in a way that was fresh and unique. These tonal shifts helped define Marvel's ability to tell a wide variety of stories while maintaining a cohesive narrative. Post-Endgame, however, the MCU has struggled to maintain this balance, with some films and shows venturing too far into certain tones, making it difficult to connect them to the larger universe. For instance, while Thor: Love and Thunder, 2022, was hailed for its colorful, comedic tone, many fans found it jarring compared to the more serious, introspective Thor: Ragnarok, 2017. The tonal shift made it harder for the audience to invest in the character's evolution, and the film struggled to maintain its narrative weight. Similarly, The Eternals, 2021, film took a more philosophical and slower pace, which left audiences divided, as it was far removed from the action-packed intensity of previous films. As the MCU continues to expand, maintaining a consistent tone across its films has become a significant challenge. The focus on introducing new characters and exploring various genres from action comedies to supernatural thrillers has fractured the cohesiveness that made the MCU unique. Marvel must find a way to balance its diverse range of characters while maintaining a unified vision, or risk losing its identity altogether. The overemphasis on the multiverse. The concept of the multiverse was introduced with Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, 2022, and heavily explored in Spider-Man: No Way Home, 2021. This concept opens up endless possibilities, from bringing back beloved characters to introducing alternate realities and parallel universes. However, as promising as the multiverse seemed, its overuse and mishandling in some of Marvel's subsequent projects have started to feel more like a gimmick than a thoughtfully integrated narrative tool. Initially, the multiverse concept was intriguing, allowing for the return of characters from different franchises, like Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man in No Way Home. The film's success proved that audiences were excited about the potential of multiple realities, but the rushed implementation of this concept across films like Doctor Strange 2 and Loki, 2021, left audiences confused. Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness was a prime example of the multiverse being used as a plot device without fully explaining its implications. Instead of adding depth, it opened the door for an overcomplicated and fractured narrative. Marvel's eagerness to explore infinite realities has led to a lack of narrative grounding. Instead of focusing on fleshing out characters and their relationships with one another, the multiverse has allowed for an easier escape route. Anything can happen seems to be the current rule. This over-reliance on parallel universes, alternate versions of characters, and confusing timelines has made it difficult for the MCU to maintain a clear, cohesive narrative moving forward. The initial excitement about the multiverse has given way to fatigue, and unless Marvel begins to reintroduce more coherent, focused storytelling, the multiverse could risk becoming a crutch, rather than a valuable addition to the universe. The decline of Marvel's legacy. The MCU's success over the past decade has been built on the strength of its talented directors, writers, and creative minds. In the early phases, Marvel Studios worked closely with visionary filmmakers like Jon Favreau, Iron Man, Joss Whedon, The Avengers, and Taika Waititi, Thor: Ragnarok, who brought their distinct voices to the franchise. This creative diversity helped the MCU feel fresh and dynamic, while still maintaining a unified vision. However, since Endgame, Marvel has seen a noticeable decline in the originality and quality of its films and TV series, with many of its recent releases criticized for lacking the distinct flair that once made the franchise so special. One factor contributing to this decline is creative fatigue. With the MCU expanding at an unprecedented rate, Marvel Studios has had to lean on new talent, often sacrificing quality control in favor of meeting release deadlines. Directors like Chloe Zhao, Eternals, and Nia DaCosta, Captain Marvel 2, are incredibly talented filmmakers, but they've been tasked with fitting their unique voices into an increasingly formulaic Marvel machine. This has led to films that feel more like generic superhero flicks than the distinctive, character-driven pieces that characterized the first three phases. Furthermore, there's a noticeable drop in the narrative complexity that was so central to the Infinity Saga. The interconnected stories of Iron Man, Captain America, Thor, and the Avengers gave the MCU a sense of unity and purpose, but in the post-Endgame era, many films and shows are released in a haphazard manner, with minimal interconnections. Marvel has failed to establish a new overarching narrative that holds the franchise together. This lack of a central, cohesive story makes the MCU feel fragmented and lacks the high-stakes build-up that made Endgame so satisfying. The future of the MCU, can it rebuild? Marvel faces a daunting challenge as it moves forward. The post-Endgame era has exposed weaknesses in the franchise's formula, from the lack of strong central characters to the overwhelming volume of content. However, there is still hope for a course correction. The upcoming Avengers, the Kang Dynasty and Secret Wars offer an opportunity to bring the multiverse saga's disparate elements together. To succeed, Marvel must prioritize cohesive storytelling and invest in character development. Introducing a new central figure, someone who can serve as the emotional and narrative anchor of the franchise, is essential. Additionally, Marvel must address its pacing issues. Scaling back on the number of projects and focusing on quality over quantity will help restore audience trust. Films like Shang-Chi and series like Loki have shown that Marvel can still deliver compelling stories when given the time and resources. However, to succeed in the new cinematic landscape, Marvel must also learn from its mistakes, focusing on quality over quantity, developing stronger character arcs, and respecting the audience's desire for emotionally engaging, interconnected storytelling. The MCU has revolutionized superhero cinema once, and if it learns from its post-Endgame missteps, it may just reclaim its place at the forefront of modern cinematic storytelling.